seeing any legislative approaches to say that?
Yes. That would say
that would say that all of these people now, if they were supervised by, is there any legislation that's coming that way?
We don't know.
To allow it?
I found out last week, we actually had a pretrial conference in Brooks' case. Just so you know where that's at right now, we've got a hearing on some motions coming up in February. The board was pushing for a fast trial. They wanted to get this over and done with. And we've said, if Brooks going to have her livelihood on the line, we're going to make sure that she's got as much evidence as she needs to put on the best defense possible. So we're trying to push the trial back until we've had the chance to make sure we've got as much evidence as we can. And we also want to give the legislature time to act. But right now the trial is scheduled for June 1st. Okay, so that's what it's scheduled for right now. But as far as legislation, we found out at this conference that apparently the Veterinary Medical Association is going to propose a bill that would make it even more difficult for people in Brooks' position to work. I don't know what the shape of that bill is going to be. I only heard about it last week. But we understand that this is what the Veterinary Medical Association is pushing for. From our side, Representative Tom Lerner, who is the chairman of the House Agriculture Committee, he's spoken to Brooks several times. He really believes in her cause, and he has said that he's going to try and get a bill introduced into the legislature that would make sure that animal husbandry is exempt from the Veterinary Practice Act. So we are eager to see what that legislation looks like when it comes through. We've also talked to a number of senators who are interested in trying to make sure that vets or that animal husbandry practitioners are free to practice. But one of the biggest helps that we can have right now is for people who are interested in this topic and you have an opinion about how it should come out. Please contact your legislators and let them know what your feelings are on this. We were just talking in the session with the board and the leaders of the Equine Council about how important it is for people to get involved. Really, that's the best thing that you can do is to let your legislators know what you think about the importance of traditional animal husbandry and whether it should be criminalized or whether it should be something that people are allowed to do. I'd love to take any questions that you guys have at this time. Yes, ma'am.
Drew told me that in Oklahoma and Texas, that the courts have found in favor of the equine fence.
Not quite. In Oklahoma, it was a legislative fix. I used to work for a group called the Institute for Justice. It's a national law firm that focuses on individual liberty. And they handled a case in Texas, they handled a case in Minnesota, and they were going to handle Bobby Griswold's case in Oklahoma. But in Oklahoma, the legislature went in and changed the law to make it clear that this was not going to be a violation anymore.
Okay.
And so that's one way of winning these kinds of situations. In Texas, they won in the courts. And the way that they won in the courts is, years ago, the veterinary board started writing letters to people who had asked, hey, is the work I'm doing acceptable, or am I running afoul of the law? And the board said, and they were writing to farriers and horse teeth floaters, they wrote them back and said, you're fine, we're not going to mess with you on this, keep doing what you're doing. And then they changed their tune.
Until somebody complains.
Exactly. And so about 6 years ago, they started getting complaints from veterinarians, and they changed their tune. They said, all right, now we're going to go and we're going to shut these people down. And so there was a big lawsuit that drug out for 3-4 years, and the courts finally resolved it in favor of the equine dentists, the horse teeth floaters, on the grounds that the Veterinary Medical Board did not go through the proper rulemaking procedure. Okay, so the courts down there did not say, like we would have preferred for them to say, that this is just a constitutional right, the right to earn a living in a basic traditional profession. We would have preferred for them to come down like that. Instead, they said the board didn't make the rule properly, so you can't enforce it this way. But if the board went back and passed the rule through the proper procedures, they could then go back to shutting down horse teeth floaters. Now in Minnesota, IJ actually lost the case. and the courts in Minnesota said, sorry, the way the law is written, it's illegal to provide these services, and we're not going to change that. So what we're doing in Missouri is kind of a two-pronged approach. We're fighting on Brooke's behalf in the courts. We're going to put on the best case that we can to show why it's completely unreasonable that you should have to get a veterinarian's license before you engage in these professions. But we're also hoping that the legislature is gonna get involved and make it so that we never have to go through the suspense of getting Brooke in front of a court on this issue. Now, one thing I will say is that in Missouri, you've got a constitutional right to a jury trial, and because Brooke has been accused of criminal activity, we've claimed her right to a jury trial, in part because we believe that if you put a jury of Brooke's peers out there and they hear about what she's doing and what the law says, they'll engage in a little thing called jury nullification. And that means that even if the government proves that technically there's a violation of the law, the people will refuse to convict. We hope that that's the case. Well, I would love for that to be the case. I'm afraid the Assistant Attorney General is going to do everything he can to try and prevent that from happening. But we think that a panel of ordinary Missourians, when they hear these facts, they'll just refuse to convict Brooke, even if the government is able to put on enough evidence that the acts that she has done, while we don't admit to anything, if they manage to prove that she has done something that violates the law, we think that a jury would refuse to convict. That's why we think the right to a jury trial is so important. We think that it's important for the people to be able to exercise an independent check on unjust laws. And so the government is trying to oppose her right to a jury trial. They say she's got no right for a group of her peers to evaluate the facts in this case. And so we're going to fight that out too. That's one of the things that we expect to be argued at that February 15th hearing. And so I hope that you folks will keep an eye on the news, because we're hoping to get this issue out in the news, get people talking about it, because the more people talk about it, the more likely it is that the legislature is going to sit up and say, you know what, something needs to be fixed here. Let's see about fixing this. One of the things that I want to make absolutely clear as well, we just talked to the state veterinarian. He was in here to be on the previous panel, and I made sure that he was aware of the issue. He's well aware of the issue. He's a horseman himself. And he said, the biggest concern that we have is the use of drugs. And one of the things that I think is going to be the hardest fight that we've got at the legislature as we're talking about this issue is this concern about what does it mean for non-veterinarians using sedatives or things like that. The bill that we are interested in seeing passed does not give anyone permission to use drugs who doesn't currently have it. Okay? Now, people in the agricultural community know that a lot of livestock owners, a lot of farriers, a lot of anyone who works with these animals keep on hand sedatives to use. We heard one of the farriers talking earlier about how he's a chemical cowboy and how he doesn't take risks. And if he sees an animal that looks like it might act up and cause a threat to his safety, he's got no problem with tranquilizing. Now, technically that's a violation of the law, but we all know that that's pretty common practice. And so we are not looking to change what the law is, but I am hopeful that there will be some common sense brought into this, so that as long as you've got a veterinarian prescribing these drugs, that it's not a problem to use them. We're not going to push for that. And as a matter of fact, we're going to try and avoid talking about it as much as possible, because it'll just confuse the issue. But at the same time, everyone in this community knows it's just common sense. But so I'm happy to take any other questions that you got. I know we got just a few minutes before.
I'll make a suggestion for you.